Welcome to our 2019 State of the Church. This is our second year, right? Doing a video.
Right.
So we're still learning. We hope that it'll be helpful to you, but we're going to run through for you basically how 2019 worked itself out and take you through the finances. Karen Fanter will do that. And we'll also talk about what we see happening in 2020 if the Lord is pleased. So been very busy for both of our campuses because we're able to see how God is moving us forward with our purposes and goals. They both have increased in size. That's encouraging. We're seeing people come to faith, which is our ultimate desire. Along with that, we've been making some major decisions that are still working themselves out with the other elders. First, it's to continue to plant requires that we have people who want to plant churches, and that's something we cannot overemphasize. I think would be the best way. Is it can't be just us wanting to plant a church. We need an entire church.
Yeah.
Church that's heartbeat is to see more churches planted. They're like-minded. Not just a pastor who will lead the plant, but the people who have the vision and desire to actually work with him. And so we would ask that you would consider if that might be you. With Matt Miller, we had a very natural group. We were just talking about this the other day at a meeting we were in. We had a natural group that were up in the northern part, and so they were much more easier to gather around him to plant. Now we're looking at our next church to plant, and it's not quite as clear. And so we need to be thinking about that. Even doing it with you, it was difficult. Just trying to decide who should go with you, who should stay. Along with that, what stood out to you with the Oak Creek?
So as we've been doing this, we're now almost 2 years in.
That blows me away.
Yeah, April will be 2 years, and so we're still becoming stable. I mean, I think you would say even too, it's fairly solid at this point, but it's growing. This year's been a building year, and that's what we'll be looking to this year as well. But having said that, with some kind of church plant in the future, we recognize, I think, right now that it's going to have to, in large measure, come from Kenosha. You guys are just bigger. There's more people, more resources. And so, but with that, some challenges have come up, particularly with Kenosha. And so the first is we recognize that it was necessary to reconfigure a few rooms, one being the sanctuary, which you can speak to in a second, the other one, fellowship hall, and I can talk to that because I'm doing it. But we wanted to convert the fellowship hall to be a multi-use room, but really a teaching room in many ways, because we're doing a lot of training with church planting, and it's going to function as a room that we can formally hold that training in, called Send Training with the North American Mission Board. And so we needed to revamp the room to make it suitable for that, and just the whole feel of the room and everything. There's a lot of things that we learned in our training to become trainers that's necessary for a good education room.
Right.
And so behind that's the reason for a lot of the changes. Secondly, as we look ahead to the future, we want to start recording, Lord willing, our own lectures in curriculum, because we don't know what's going on with seminaries, and we talk a lot, but we really feel the way of the seminary in the longer term future may go away, just with the state of our culture and things like that. But we still have to train men. And so the church is responsible for that. And so we want to be able to do that. And we think that recording lectures and our classes will be able to hopefully do that sufficiently. So with that, though, we needed to revamp that room and make it a hospitable place to do these classes. So
plus, we're going to add with that the ability to do quality videos, stream in information. So like if we became a remote campus, we'd be able to even stream video, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, we're going to be able to do a lot.
It's a really multi-purpose room,
Yeah.
And once it's done, I think everyone will say this is great, and it will be something not just used for us, but when Bruce is doing his biblical counseling classes and stuff, the same idea.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, sanctuary, and we got our chairs.
Got the chairs.
Yeah, they're there, and
still
by
sore.
the time they see this video, they'll have sat in them. But we're expanding the size of our room by reconfiguring the whole stage. And the whole idea behind it is that we want to be able to add about 325 seats in the room. Right now, we could sit, in 2019, we would be able to squeeze in 250. And that's
African style.
Yeah, that's not a pleasant squeeze either. So if we are wanting to plant, we need more people so that we have a broader base to draw from that would be willing to go with like Grayson somewhere. And so that was the most cost-effective way for us to be able to do it. And so we're in the process. Like all things, it becomes more complex once you start to do it. In my mind, it was like, just move these walls back a few feet, and the city says otherwise. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So you got some additional observations here?
Right. Along with that, we've thought about, and we're open to the idea of a new building actually leaving.
For Kenosha.
Right, for Kenosha, for the very purpose of, at some point, our church can only grow to the point that it can grow. I mean, we have a limited parking, and so there's just certain things that prevent us from doing anything on a larger scale. So if the Lord blesses a church that it grows in such a way that we're not ready to plant, but we have more people, we don't want to turn them away. We want them to come and find a place to grow.
Yeah.
So that's where we began to think perhaps it might be wise to look for a site that we could build on, or an existing building that we could handle financially, all with the goal of getting to a size. I think we pretty well agreed that 500, right around 500 is about where we don't want to get much bigger than that, because...
But it's a good base for multiplication.
Yeah. Now, our hope is that as we are growing, that we're always then sending people out with a planter. And we have Grayson ready to go. We have others behind him who are preparing to go. And now we even have some young men who are in their teens that are thinking about the ministry. So we're very encouraged with what the future lies.
And it always happens faster than we're expecting.
So back to you.
Well, as two campuses, we're watching, our churches evolve, and it's interesting. It's been interesting to watch that process play out. We keep explaining it, especially with my location. We're building the plane as it's taking off. But I would say it's not so much that anymore. I mean, we're there.
Yeah, the wings are on the plane, and it's
we're
in
flying.
the air.
Yeah. But there's just been a lot of, flexing and having to figure things out. And I mean, we've seen God's kindness in every step of the way. But it's been interesting to watch that play out. The long-term goal has been what?
Well, and I think this bears repeating, because we love the people up in Oak Creek, the Kenosha people do. But the goal was always to plant the campus with the goal that it would become its own church. And that's where we're heading. And that can be hard for sometimes people who are like, well, we want to still be part of the Missio Dei Church. And it's like, we're not breaking off and having a divorce, but they have to become their own entity. I mean, at some point, you guys, and you're already doing that. You're already becoming more and more self-identified as you have more and more people coming there. They've never been to Kenosha.
It's been very interesting to watch that dynamic, and how many, and this one was shocking me because I'm so used to driving, and I think everyone who came to Oak Creek from Kenosha they're so used to it, but the amount of people who overtly tell me when a class is being offered in Kenosha, I'm not driving down there. Because they just don't think that way.
Right.
Which is normal and fine and good. But there's the newer people at our church, they're aware that there's something in Kenosha, but they're just like, okay.
Right. And along with that, though, it's going to reflect some of the values and giftedness that your campus has right now that necessarily the look and feel of your church service and how you go about doing small groups, how you go about evangelizing or doing classes. It's just going to look different because you're in a different location. And we always plan for that. We've been expecting it, but it bears repeating in this video just to have people understand. There will be a day that you will be your own fully functioning church, and Lord willing, planting your own churches, hopefully in cooperation with us, and that will continue that process of creating a network of churches, all jointly working together to continue to spread further more solid churches.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So both campuses have enjoyed an influx of new people, and as you said, they're bringing their giftedness, their personalities into that.
That's always encouraging.
And it's wonderful to watch too. We've continued to see tremendous faithfulness by so many financially in their giving to the church, and you'll hear from Karen Fannell on this, and hopefully everyone will be encouraged.
We were blown away with
phenomenal year that we were. I mean, just given all that we're doing, it was just crazy how generous people have been, how faithful God has been. So hopefully you'll be able to hear about that. And Ethiopia?
Yeah, 3 times we traveled.
Yeah.
And in 2019, we're planning 2 to 3 more trips this year. We fully trained our first cohort of pastors and leaders in the church there. We have a second cohort that we began to teach. You and I are heading out, Lord willing, in March. I'm going to take Grayson later on in the year, so he's going to start getting his first cross-cultural experience there. But our little church is having an impact not just in our area, but literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah. And we didn't put anything in here, but also our podcast. That thing.
How did we miss that?
I don't know. But that thing just keeps spreading all over the place. And for 2 guys sitting around and just talking, it's amazing now the feedback we're getting from it and how many people all over, on multiple continents are being helped. And it's humbling in one sense, but in another sense, we're thankful for even the opportunity. Because, you were just saying, I never thought in 1,000 years, 15 years ago, that you'd be sitting with 3 cameras here and doing things like podcasts and being able to serve people on the other side of the world.
On the other side, though, something that we both have noticed is how we have a lot of people outside our church listening to the podcast, but not necessarily inside the church. And that one, we would want to encourage you to seriously understand that the podcast exists for the very purpose of instructing our church.
That's why we did it.
Yeah, we're not doing this so that some guy in, I can't even pronounce the place, Upsingangar, India. We got a faithful listener there. It's some place outside of Mumbai. Mumbai or Mumbai, you know the one. Anyhow, obviously I don't know what I'm talking about, but he or she listens faithfully to us. That's not who our target audience is. Actually the people that are going to our church. It's a way that you can begin to learn your theology at whatever time of the day, whatever day of the week you want. We're literally teaching theology and dealing with practical issues such as when Kanye West became all the rage, or
pastoral issue on that. And for me personally, because I don't have a building up there, so I can't do Bible studies.
Well, that's part of why we had to do it.
This has been my means of being able to teach and do Bible studies and those sorts of things. And so I'm encouraged at one level at the ones I do hear listening to it. Another level, I want to encourage those who aren't to listen.
And if you're not sure how to work a podcast, let us know. If we have to, we'll put together like a instructional video or something. It's extremely easy. I figured it out, and my wife figured it out. She actually, each morning she logs in and listens to a podcast. And it's always weird when you're walking up the stairs and you hear your voice coming from the bathroom and she's in there, putting makeup on or something. You're like, okay, I guess I'll listen to my voice again.
I'm still getting used to stuff. I walked into somebody's house because I was meeting with them for something, and I'm like, what's that noise? And it was one of my sermons playing, and I'm like, It's bizarre.
Yes,
Turn that
it
off.
is. Well, anyhow, talk about
So
the
Oak Creek, yeah. So just kind of a review of this past year. We celebrated 4 baptisms, which is wonderful, and then had 13 new members,
which is great.
pretty significant. So that's really exciting. As I said, 2019 really in large measure functioned as a building year, and 2020 looks to be the same. And so with that, we have no major plans at this point in terms of big things that we want to do. Rather, we want to just keep building that solid foundation. We want to continue building both in depth and breadth. We want to continue to find ways to reach the community and the lost people in the area that God has placed us. And it was neat to reflect on how I think now, apart from 1 or 2 of those cities in southern Milwaukee, we have members living in every single one of them.
Yeah.
You know, Greenfield, Greendale, Cudahy, South Milwaukee, Franklin, Oak Creek. I mean, pretty much we've covered the whole southern Milwaukee County area.
And now it's helping each one of those pinpoints of Missio, and more importantly, the gospel, to understand that's their mission field.
Yes.
That's what, your sermon, go. You can't make a disciple unless you're going. Well, where are they to go? Right there. You live there.
Right. Yeah.
So go there. So if you need help in thinking through that, we can help you. But God has put you there, and that's the whole idea behind the Missio Dei Fellowship concept. Is God has placed us sovereignly in a place, and literally your whole area, with the exception of 2 places, now has somebody who knows the gospel.
Mm-hmm. And you're a missionary there,
which is exciting.
Right. So just to reiterate, though, there's no major plans, but as always and as usual, things are subject to change. So, but there's nothing in our minds right now. In terms of ministries with the church, as more people have been coming to the church, we've been seeing a lot more get involved in various areas, which is really encouraging. When we planted, it was all hands on deck, and everyone was doing multiple things every single week. And so everyone is still busy and faithfully serving in many ways. But I'm seeing as the new members come in, they're now stepping up and they're serving and they're wanting to serve. And so that's something I've been thankful for. And for those who planted with us, I think that they're thankful for as well.
Well, yeah, gives them a little bit of rest.
Right. Obviously, one of the key ministries for Sunday morning is sound and music. Pat O'Keefe has been very faithful to labor every single week to provide the church with worship, and so we're thankful to him. It's one of those ministries that at some point becomes thankless, as you just do it week in and week out, but he's done a very faithful job, and so just want to publicly thank him for that. Requires time, it requires care. All of our songs, and this is something that I'm thankful for that I don't ever have to think about, is all of our music is very Christ-centered, very gospel-saturated, and so not having to ever think about the quality of our music is just a box that I can check that's nice to have. I'm not having to edit anything. So thank you to Pat, and I know that our entire church very much appreciates you. Noah, Guida, Travis, Harp have done an exemplary job in caring for sound and setup every single Sunday. They're there along with Pat very early to make certain that everything's running smoothly, and they're tearing down everything efficiently. Running slides and sound is not an easy task, and most people, I don't think, understand the subtle pressure that is there when you're in charge of things and you're just not wanting things to mess up.
Yeah, and nobody ever notices them until
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work,
Yeah.
and then people are giving you the dirty look. Now, they won't necessarily help you. They or like, why are my slides not working? And it's an incredibly important ministry that's not appreciated by people as it ought to be.
Yeah, it's true. So they've done a great job. So thank you guys for your labors and for being faithful every single week. Sunday school ministry is going strong. All of our teachers continue to do a very excellent job as the church continues to grow. I know they've been training people and letting people shadow them. And so we're having more hands in that ministry, which is great. Meeting in a movie theater provides challenges. And
Is that what we're calling it?
Challenges, yes. But they've done an awesome job just being able to flex and make use of of what we have. And so, that's all going strong. Words can be cheap, but I'm very thankful for the many who serve in this area. It's such an important ministry and is work that's praiseworthy and commendable. And so they should all be praised for that. As the church continues to grow, we look to the future. And so we're going to need more teachers. And so if you're one who may have an interest in teaching our children, talk to either Nicole Severino or Brittany Katie, who are in charge of their respective classes. And I know they'd be happy to let you shadow for the purpose of you being able to serve in the future. Along with children's is that very important ministry of nursery. This is critical. It's a critical ministry. It's often unseen or not even thought about unless you have children. But it's a very important one. It's especially for, allowing parents to be able to worship without distraction and know with confidence that their kids are being cared for and cared for well. So thank you to all of you who serve in that ministry every single week. Again, that's such a good work, plays an integral role in our larger service on Sundays. Quite simply, many things could not happen if we didn't have that ministry, because you're just, the nature of dealing with children, as you know, can be chaotic. So thank you both to Justin and Missy who head this up. They take great care in caring for both the teachers, but especially the little ones. So thank you to them. And then finally, very encouraged by our greeter ministry, which of course includes Bob on coffee.
Shout out to Bob.
Yeah. The constant refrain I keep hearing from new visitors is how welcoming our church is. And the way we've been able to, you're kind of discombobulated walking into a movie theater and you're supposed to now do church. But the way they set up the signs and they kind of transform our little area is pretty amazing. And so, but new visitors are always, I think, pleasantly shocked to see, wow, this is a movie theater, But how welcoming, especially our greeter ministry is, and it's very important. It's the first thing they encounter when they walk into a church, and so it can have a major impact in either helping or, frankly, harming.
I think actually being kind of an outsider, that you guys do a great job with that from the moment they walk in, they're thinking movie theater, but they quickly are transitioned in their thinking that they're at church. They've come now to gather worship, because we're not trying to act like a movie theater. We're still a body of believers gathering to worship, and that mindset of how all of those people do that, I think, pull it off really well.
Yeah.
I think people just forget that they're in a movie theater.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes a couple weeks to completely make that switch, but it's funny because now we go into a movie theater and I now feel like I'm going to church.
Oh, that's funny.
Especially Naomi. She's like, we're going to church. But coming to church and, so since we're in the same place every single week, we can forget about that aspect of how important being hospitable is and having a solid greeter team is for new visitors. Especially, when you're coming to a new church and you're trying to insert yourself into that community, it can be a fearful thing, I think. And especially the smaller that your church is, which, we're 75 strong, so it's pretty small. You realize I'm entering into a pretty tight community of people. And so that can be scary, I think. And we just can easily forget about that. And so you can feel like you're an interloper. Rather, if you're visiting a larger church, I would even say a church your size, it's a little easier because it's just bigger. It's not as intimate or small.
I remember the days when we were 75, and a visitor was much more intimidated then because they stood out.
Right. Yeah. But I think it's something that we're doing very well. And so I just want to praise everybody for that. All of our greeters do a phenomenal job. So thank you to Liz Rader and Lydia for heading that ministry up. And of course, Bob, who keeps everyone in the upright position with his coffee. So thank you for that. So again,
Bob.
Just to end the Oak Creek part here, thanks to everyone in the church. My heart is often encouraged when I think about our church and everyone's faithfulness to it. Starting a new church it's been easy in many ways, but in some ways it's also not been easy. And you've all helped make that easy. We're almost 2 years old at this point, and so with that, at some point, we're no longer a church plant, but we're becoming a church. I think it was you were preaching there one day, and you turned around and you're like, dude, there's like, you got a church here.
Yeah.
Because it was full.
Yeah.
So when I take a step back and just look at the church, I see God's faithfulness in many ways. There are many behind the scenes things that happen every single week. Now I'm in the unique position that I get to have that privilege of being aware of almost all of these things. Most people in the church don't get that perspective, but I get to see that. And so in light of having that perspective, all I can say is I'm very thankful to God, who's provided us in so many tangible and intangible ways and continues to provide for us, especially through the faithfulness of individuals. So again, thanks to everyone for your service and your commitment to this church effort.
And I think being the guy that comes up on alternate weeks, it's nice for me because I get to see some of those things fresh. And it's been a blessing to watch each week new people coming in, see the ones that I still think of as my people, that they are faithfully serving there and owning the place. So yeah, it's something to praise God, but also thank the people as you did. So with Kenosha, a different animal there, and yet it's the same animal. We've got much to be thankful as well. We celebrated 14 baptisms. Again, all of these are always done at our celebration service. And that's a wonderful thing to see, is people coming to faith and them testifying of that. We brought in 15 new members. So actually just a few more, 2 more than you did, which is really an encouraging thing on your end. Key ministries, we purposely keep our church simple. It's all part of our philosophy, but we have some very key ones. Just like with yours, the Sunday school, it's very stable. It's growing, and it's growing because we're having new members come in and we keep making new babies. So it is what it is. But Mike Strickland oversees that now, and he's been doing that very well. He works with the lead teacher in each classroom. One thing we would ask, though, is it's such an important ministry that people tend to think others should do rather than themselves. And so we would say, consider your role. If you've been coming to our church for a while and you're an adult and you're a Christian, you might inquire about that. The more people we have, the easier it is, but it's also a real blessing to the teachers as they get to know these children and they realize they're actually impacting their spiritual walk. The music and sound ministry is, again, very strong work in our church. Lena oversees this along with her husband, Mark. In fact, she's behind these cameras right now. Lena shows an incredible level of care about how our service flows. And I think that people see it. They see it when they see the passages that are being read coming up on the screen and one song flowing to the next, and everything is planned out and worked, and she labors hard to do that. The whole idea of it being that we want people to encounter a God-centered type of worship, and that they can do it with great joy because they're not distracted. We've had a lot of new people actually volunteering. It's kind of fun. I walk up into the sound booth and there's somebody else there that just started. So we're seeing the volunteers rise up. That's always the unsung ministry, as we already said, with your campus. Our greeter ministry is doing well as also. Alex, and I have yet to, I ask her and she tells me faithfully every time how to say her last name.
I'm going with Agos.
And I think we settled Agos.
Yeah.
And then we'll get told we're wrong.
Okay.
Alex Agos, but she conceived it and implemented it and is running it, and she's just doing good. What makes me happy is when I come in and I'm behind a new couple that's coming to our church, and they walk in and they're immediately greeted and treated with such kindness, helping them find rooms. It just blesses my heart on so many levels. And again, the unsung ministry of the nursery. Again, nobody appreciates the nursery until there's no nursery. Melanie Tetrick is overseeing it. We're thankful for it. For those of you that wonder, we always screen all of our workers. We want a safe environment. We provide that. We would encourage something that we find interesting is some parents just don't want to take advantage of it. And if you don't, you don't. We would never make you not. But don't. But think about why you do it. And we would encourage you. It's a good place. The workers pray for your children. They care for them. But actually, there's a method to our madness too. We're preparing those children to transition from the lap of mom and dad to Sunday school. And I think it's after 2 years of age, they go into Sunday school. And if they'd never done that, then they go through that whole separation process at a later age. And so there's a method behind this is as you teach your children, you drop your child off, they'll cry. That's okay. They discover mom and dad always come back. and after a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, this is just a fun place to be. We're well cared for, and mom and dad come back. And now come Sunday school time, it's not a horrendous moment. Finally, we would give a shout out to Grayson Gilbert, who oversees the community groups and all the people who are leading those groups. This has been an excellent fit for him as he's preparing to go out and plant a church, because he's developing his leaders. He's seeing the pastoral challenges of, trying to help people grow. We have continued to have to restructure the community groups. It's a constantly morphing reality. But each time we change it, it seems like it gets stronger. We're actually now conducting formal training sessions with the community group leaders, teaching them how to maybe ask good questions. And we have some other plans that we're going to be putting into it. Now, we already mentioned the SEND Center, or what is currently the Fellowship Hall. We also talked about the idea of becoming a seminary extension campus, but also becoming our own training center, if that's how our nation continues to progress. And then one last one that we are working on and exploring is to become a classical education school. That's a process. In fact, like everything else, we're kind of flailing around and trying to figure out what to do, but we're starting to get a sense of direction. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're starting to see some pieces fall into place. So over the next year, we're hoping to start to get clearer sense of what's going on. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Karen Fantle, our treasurer, and she's going to give us her financial report. Listen to it because it's encouraging.
Hello, I am Karen Fantle, treasurer here at Missio Dei Fellowship. It is once again my pleasure to bring you our financial results for 2019 and to let you know what is being planned for our church in this upcoming year. I'd like to mention that the financial information presented is for both the Kenosha and Milwaukee campuses combined, unless specifically stated otherwise. We are one church body with 2 locations. 2019 was a year of growth for our church. Growth in attendance led to a substantial growth in giving, as we have seen an increase of 13% over contributions of 2018. The Milwaukee campus was up and running for the entire year, gaining in attendance and leveling off from its first-year startup expenditures. Kenosha also continued to grow throughout the year, and the church as a whole had an increase in attendance of 9% during 2019. Before we get into the numbers, just a reminder that the financial statements are set up as 2 separate funds, the general fund and the missions fund. The general fund accounts for all of the operating expenses for both campuses, such as personnel, building costs, all ministry and administrative expenses for running the church as a whole. We also have a missions fund, which accounts for specific outward missional related income and expenses, including mission trips and funding of external missions organizations. Let's first take a look at last year's actual results. Beginning with the general fund, we finished the year with total revenues of $481,905. God's grace has once again provided for all of our church's needs, and He provided abundantly. The 2019 total revenue number was an increase over our budgeted projection by $102,000. Of this total, $477,119 are direct contributions from you through your weekly giving. The elders have designated that 7% of our contributions go to the missions fund, so you will see this amount as a subtraction from the revenues section. Along with contributions, we as a church body additionally gave $7,086 of the approximately $23,000 needed towards the purchase of chairs for the sanctuary in Kenosha. Also included in our revenues total is other income, which is made up of funds that we receive from North American Missions Board for the funding of a portion of Pastor Miller's and Grayson's salaries, matching funds from employers of our congregants, Amazon Smile contributions, along with interest earned on our money market account. As you look towards the expenditures section for the general fund, you will see total expenditures of $433,678. This amount is above our original budgeted amount, but because of the increase in contributions throughout the year, we were able to increase our spending as well. Some of the expenditure increase came from long thought about projects that we just didn't have the funds to implement in the past, and some of the increase came out of urgent necessity. Early in the year, the furnace in the gym in Kenosha gave its last, and we had to replace it along with additional electrical and ductwork to accommodate the new furnace. Also at Kenosha, the long thought about idea of replacing the pews in the sanctuary with chairs to accommodate increased attendance was finally implemented as we were able to order and make a down payment on chairs for the Kenosha sanctuary. Another item we were able to accomplish due to an increase in contributions in 2019 is the addition of Grayson to the Missio Dei staff. Most other expenditure categories came in as expected. Overall, the general fund finished the year of 2019 with a surplus of funds of $48,227. This surplus is added to our money market savings account and will be used for future growth of our campuses. The Missions Fund also benefited from the increase in giving as it finished the year with a surplus as well. Direct giving to our Missions Fund also exceeded expectations, as did our direct giving to our special offerings for Lottie Moon, Annie Armstrong, and Voice of the Martyrs action packs. The Missions Fund also funded 2 teaching trips by our pastors to Ethiopia, funding for Emanuela's CTC Cameroon, and sponsorship of 2 children through Compassion International. The $21,000 surplus in missions giving over expenditures will be used for future outward missional activity. Moving on to the current year, I'd just like to mention that the 2020 budget was planned with growth of our 2 campuses in mind. However, no major provisions were included for potential acquisition of a new building for either campus. Just as we made revisions in 2018 to add the Milwaukee campus to our overall budget, we will certainly make provisions to the 2020 budget if the Lord provides this opportunity. Our projected contributions for this year in the general fund are $502,866. This is an increase over 2019 giving by 5%. Other income, which includes funding from North American Missions Board, will decrease slightly to $13,500, and we have not included any provision for employer matching funds nor Amazon Smile contributions. After subtracting out elder-designated funds, total revenues then are projected to come in at $481,766. Most expenditure categories are projected to have a slight increase over 2019 results, with building expenditures having a larger bump due to some new and continuing projects. The sanctuary stage remodel and the fellowship hall revamp at the Kenosha campus, being the largest of the projects, are estimated at $35,000. Total expenditures then are expected to come in at $481,766 also, making for a balanced budget for the 2020 year. Expenditures in the Missions Fund will continue to support the pastor's teaching trips to Africa, along with funding for Children Treasuring Christ and Compassion, and are projected to total $67,849. Funding for 2020 will continue to come from your direct contributions, our annual special collections, as well as the percentage of your overall giving to the church. Again, this year, the Missions Fund is projected to have a surplus at year's end. At the beginning of the year, it is always exciting to think about what the Lord might have planned for our church in the future, and it is also a great time to look back and give Him praise and thanks for what He has already provided for us. Lord willing, we will continue to see growth at both campuses in 2020. As we move throughout the year, please continue to keep in prayer your pastors, elders, and all of those who work with them in making financial decisions for our church. We wish to make wise decisions about the resources the Lord has blessed us with. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to contact me with any questions you may have regarding our financial information.
All right, well, looking to the future.
We're a smooth operation.
This is well-oiled here. So I'll just go with Milwaukee first. A key question that I keep getting asked more recently, actually, is, what about a new location? Is there something on the horizon, something more permanent, even if it's a lease? So I just keep hearing that question, and my simple answer is that my eyes are always looking, but there's absolutely nothing on the horizon right now, nothing currently in the works. Now, we've poked around and looked at a couple places just to get the landscape, but ultimately right now, we see it best just to stay where we are. Of course, there's many advantages to a more permanent location. Gives us a place to meet throughout the week, gives us a visible footprint in the community. But the theater also helps us in other ways. And so it's centralized location in southern Milwaukee. It also helps us, at least in the beginning, to be more still maintain or having to be outward facing more. I mean, when you get a building, it's this natural thing that happens where you kind of come. So there's those intangibles as well. And so I think having a place where we just meet on a Sunday is going to help us in some other ways, at least here in the beginning.
Well, your funds, almost none of your funds other than paying the rent.
Right.
You don't have to worry about the leaky roof or the water in the basement or any of those other things. So right now, at such a young age, it keeps you very flexible.
It does, yeah. And to be frank, it's also an excellent location for our current model, which is needing to drive back and forth for the preaching. And the price point can't be beat. I mean, it's just helpful for our budget. Having said that, we are starting to fill up the worship center. I've been noticing even that very top row now has multiple people in it. And so it's just starting to get fuller in there. And we still have a little room to grow. I think it holds 105 people, but those first two rows are basically unused.
That's a good point. They can't really sit on
Now the kids filter in there, but in terms of the preaching portion, it's useless. So what I've been doing is, or at least thinking through, just a way to give us possibly some more space and just give us a little more time, is considering looking at the theater on the other side of the building. It's bigger, and I think it holds like 135. So it's not a huge leap, but it would buy us some time, help us build our foundation a little more, and it's, again, of course, friendly to our budget. And so until we can start looking for something more permanent, I think that might be a good option in between, but we'll see. But just to help satisfy some curiosity to that question, I thought.
Yeah, we're not unaware of the need.
Yeah, nor are we making any decisions. We're just thinking out loud a little bit. But again, beyond that, looking to 2020, there are no major plans in place. unless the Lord literally just drops something in our lap that's like the most amazing thing. The plan right now is, or we somehow for some reason explode in size. We're going to just stay where we are this next year, and if we have to change some things, we will. But it's serving us wonderfully in many ways right now.
And I think it bears reminding them that the Lord is exceedingly faithful to us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you just heard the budget, you saw how overwhelming the giving has been. But we can give testimony in big things and small things, how He has just continued to take care of us. So if we need a new location, it's not like God would then say, well, too bad, you guys fail.
Right.
He just keeps providing. So as that need is there, we just need to be looking for what God is giving to us.
Yeah.
And I have great hope. So with regard to Kenosha, we're looking into the future. Well, first thing that you should understand is that Grayson's ready. He's done with his training. He's done with his seminary. He's ready in his mind. Him and Becca are wanting to go and plant. So what do we need? We need a clear sense of direction and location that extends the influence of our church. And so that's what we're looking for now. We also, this is very important for those listening and watching, is that we need a group of people who would consider that they might be the ones that could go and connect with Grayson and begin a new church plant. That might mean that you would have to say, well, we're going to step away from Kenosha and we're going to be willing to drive X amount of time. Maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes to go to a different place, a different town, and make that our church. Just like we have some who are going up to Oak Creek who still live down here, but they make the drive up there because they've committed themselves to that campus. Now, what we're looking at is either planting another church or doing a replant, where we are looking at churches that are struggling and are basically dying. And since we know how to replant churches, we're looking that might be a possibility, where already you have a building, you have all of the infrastructure. What you don't have are the people. You don't have that spiritual vitality. And we can then bring a gifted pastor and people into that church and breathe new life into it. And in return, we would have a place then to plant.
Right.
So we're trying to do both. You can pray toward that end. Now, if we plant in an effective manner, what will happen is people are going to notice us. We're already getting noticed, but the more churches we plant, the more men who have a heart to plant and also like our theology and methodology, they're going to be contacting us and showing up and wanting to be part of that work. So it's something that we're working still hard to do, is to change the thinking of our congregations. We still have a lot of people, and maybe some of you listening right now might realize it's you, where you have this idea that this is my church and I just want to be here. And we're trying to help change that thinking to perhaps God is calling you to go with a planter to start in a new location for the purpose of the gospel. It's always easy to just stay where you're at. But the reality is that there are a lot of communities and areas that need the gospel. There is no sound church in that area. And that's what we're trying to provide. So that's what we are trying to work on in some of our sermons, and why we say the things that we say. We have some men right now, though, who are already working toward becoming church planters in the future. And Lord willing, if we have the ability, we will plant with them. Mm-hmm. In fact, I just had a conversation with a 16-year-old who is considering the pastoral ministry. And as I listened to his thinking and his rationale, I was really impressed and excited. And I'm just looking at a young teen, and he's thinking that way. And so I'm now figuring out what's the best way to begin to shepherd somebody that young toward the goal of, Lord willing, becoming a pastor. And maybe we would have the blessing of planting with him. Now, a lesson learned is that when you church plant, you don't get to rest on your laurels. That's it. We're always,
Yeah.
we want to rest. We think, okay, we planted a church, now let's rest. No, there's no rest. And you got to get that understood. Some of the most faithful people end up leaving because of church planting. And what I mean by that is they don't leave the church angry. It's they leave because they're going with the church planter. We lost some really wonderful people in the Kenosha church because they went with you. And it's probably one of the hardest lessons I'm learning as a pastor is I poured my life and soul into some people only to watch them go away. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to develop a leader and then he leaves. But that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I'm learning myself as a pastor to rejoice as I see people prepare to leave, and even more to on how to help other members understand that this is good and necessary. I realize how growing and pastoring a church is a lot like parenting. You know, it was very simple in my mind. I raised my children to leave the home. Kim and I were committed to that we knew that from day one. Their job is to get out of our house, not stay. And I'm starting to figure out that pastoring the same way. We want them to come and to grow, but grow so they can go and flourish somewhere else and raise up other congregations. If that helps you kind of figure out where you're at, then I'm thankful for. So with that, we'll give you some prayer points, and I'll go first. In Kenosha, we can use always more vocalists and musicians. We lost some when we did the plant, and that would be something that you have to go through LENA for. We need more teachers and assistants for the Sunday school, and we can always use more greeters. So we've already listened for you, the people that you need to speak to, but I think the biggest one for me is that our people never stop and say they've done enough. Rather, each person should be considering as if each new planting opportunity is something that maybe they should be taking part of. That's what I most want you to begin to pray about is, as we have Grace and Ready, how many of Kenosha campus people are asking, God, is it me? Would you like me to go with him? Rather than, I'm not going. Mm-hmm. And so we're asking you, would you just pray that way? Just ask God, open up my eyes to the opportunities that are before us through Grayson, and maybe that's what I should be doing.
Yeah. Well, they'll never be bored.
No.
I'll tell you that much.
Well, in fact, they'll get used in ways they never thought.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think your people will be able to say, we did this.
Yeah.
We did it. And I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of the chance they took. I know, and thankful for it. So anyhow,
absolutely,
those are the things I would ask for prayer.
On my end, I am still struck at God's faithfulness to provide. And I would say, especially though, when the entire body is praying. And I just look back to that one example of when we were trying to plant the church, and everything was basically there, but we couldn't do anything till we had a location. And everything was kind of built off that. And we finally just said, why aren't we just praying together, the full church, And so we shot out a couple things and said, hey, this is how we want the whole church to be praying right now. In, less than a week, the perfect location popped up, the one that we were originally looking at and hoping for. And God gave it to us. And so for me, it's always just going to be a reminder, the power of what can happen when the entire body is praying together with purpose.
Well, you do not have because you do not ask.
What a concept, So with that, though, of course, is the question of, or the prayer point of a location. That is a question people keep asking. What are we going to do with that? I already talked some points on that, but as the church does keep growing, we're going to need, Lord willing, another location and another option at some point. And so I would just say over this next year, be praying about that. Along with that, pray that God would continue to raise up people to serve. And again, while everyone's been faithful, there is something good about being able to take a rest for a season, especially when you've planted a church and you're doing 17 things every single Sunday. And so the more we have serving, obviously the less inclined people are going to be to grow tired or weary or frustrated. And so be praying for that. And then, as you were mentioning, I would say with Milwaukee as well, consider if it's you, why not you? Even as we are growing, we're growing. And so now I could already sense it's going to be easy to say, well, somebody else will take care of that or somebody else will step up. And we would just say, maybe that person is you. So just consider and pray about that. And then finally, of course, pray, and this is probably one of the ones that's most on my heart, is that we would, in fact, reach the greater Milwaukee area with the gospel. That's why we're there. That's why we intentionally inserted ourselves into a new community and didn't just, build a giant building by the interstate that everybody could drive to. We want to be in those communities and reaching the lost that are there. And so pray that we would continue to have a heart for evangelism and local mission, and that God would save, honestly, many people through our ministry and bring them into his fold. I really believe we're up there for a reason. God has provided everything. And so may we just be faithful with that.
So that's our year-end review, looking also into 2020. We hope you find this fruitful. And again, we do ask that you keep our churches in prayer, and we bid you good day.
Thank you.